Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a few days since I broadcasted. Because I'm too busy nowadays, I have not much time to speak like this on the phone speaker. Today, I think, I want to introduce some important paper written by Mosaic at the Hudson Institute, in a commentary form issued June 23rd, about 1 week ago. Hudson Institute released a very important article by the name of Commentary with the title of How the U.S. Attack on Iran Hurt Russia and China. Of course, implication for North Korea is not small. It has a big implication for North Korea. We remember the Operation Midnight Hammer, accomplished by the United States bombing. It really produced a lot of political meaning for Iran, Israel, China, Russia, and the United States, North Korea, and so on. Washington and Israel have undermined Iran's place in the Middle East, and by doing so have destabilized the anti-American axis led by China and Russia, of which it is a part. We know that since 1979, the Islamic Republic of Iran has cast itself as the vanguard of global resistance to Western dominance. Its revolutionary ideology fuses, shared political theology with a militant, anti-Western breed of anti-imperialism, portraying the United States and Israel not simply as geopolitical adversaries, but as existential enemies of a divinely ordained order. So they framed the United States of America as the great Satan and Israel as the little Satan, and making death to America was his regime's enduring slogan. But after successful bombing into nuclear facilities in Iran, we know that a lot of different interpretations and some reactions from other countries came out, especially for China and Russia. This narrative of a sacred struggle against the West offers a moral framework for challenging the US-led order, making Iran not just a strategic ally, but an ideological force within the axis. Iran plays three major converging geostrategic roles in the Russia-China axis. Iran was such an important axis viewed from China and Russia's standing point. First, it destabilized the Middle East through a sprawling proxy network in Lebanon, in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, consisting of armed movements designed to encircle Israel, weaken American allies, and shift the regional balance through relentless asymmetric warfare. Second, according to the article, it served as a critical strategic asset to Moscow and Beijing by facilitating sanctions evasion and anchoring diplomatic coalitions aimed at eroding the US-led order. Third, it offered geographic and logistical depth to the axis, acting as a bridge between Eurasia and the Middle East, and enabling Russia and China to expand their influence across energy corridors and the strategic checkpoint. For Beijing, this positioning was vital to its infrastructure push across southern Asia, known as the Belt and Road Initiative. For Moscow, it offered the real base of operations for military and paramilitary coordination. So, through a coordinated military campaign, Washington and Jerusalem are systematically dismantling the infrastructure and that enabled Iran to facilitate covert arms transfers and support proxy networks. Iran's logistical networks and sanctions resistance systems now under serious threat. They are critical enablers of China's ambitions across the Middle East and Africa. Just as revealing was the silence that followed Washington's strikes on Tehran's key nuclear facilities. When Iran came under a direct attack, neither Xi Jinping nor Vladimir Putin offered support. This is very important. Then, who will be protecting Iran in the future if the United States continue to attack? If we analyze the views from Beijing, Iran is central to China's Middle East strategy, not simply as a regional partner, but as a strategic asset through which Beijing can challenge US dominance. By deepening ties with Tehran, China established a presence in one of the most conflict-ridden areas of the world while avoiding the risks and costs of military entanglement. This kind of alignment reflects a broader Chinese strategy rooted in Mao Zedong's theory of a protracted war, something like that. So, the deepened partnership between Iran and China. One pillar of this partnership is energy. Iranian oil underpins the China-Iran relationship, providing Beijing with both economic leverage and strategic insulation. This kind of energy trade serves multiple Chinese objectives. First, it allows Beijing to build up its strategic petroleum reserves quietly without exposing itself to the price volatility or diplomatic backlash. By stockpiling cut-rate Iranian oil outside the traditional market, China reduces its vulnerability to supply shocks, embargoes, or coordinated Western pressure. How about the second point? Second, it limits China's dependence on US-aligned producers in the Persian Gulf. Countries like the United States, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait remain embedded in American alliance system. Iran, however, is likely to remain a loyal supplier to China, and it's unlikely to buckle under US pressure. Third, Iranian oil serves as a hedge against China's geographic constraint. Roughly 80% of China's crude import pass through maritime choke point, like the Strait of Malacca, which is patrolled by US and allied naval forces. Iranian oil reaches China through covert maritime shipment, often using unregistered vessels, creating a parallel supply chain that is harder to disrupt. In this context, Iranian oil is a strategic asset. It feeds China's industrial machine, supports its energy independence, and insulates it from coercive power of the US-led global order. Beyond energy, this commentary continues to analyze that. Iran is a key partner in China's Belt and Road Initiative, which seeks to create a network of overland route, port, and railroad stretching from China and Southeast Asia westward across the continent, through the Middle East, and onward to Europe and even Africa. So the 25-year China-Iran strategic partnership concluded in 2021 cemented this role and transformed Iran into a critical artillery in Beijing's vision of a new Eurasia, one where Chinese power provides a counterweight to U.S. dominance. You know, the Houthis activities backed by Iran to help China. This low-cost strategy allows China to reap the benefit of a low-grade warfare without risking direct conflict. The centerpiece of this kind of strategy was China's facilitation of the Saudi-Iran normalization agreement, a diplomatic breakthrough that effectively neutralized Riyadh's historic opposition to Tehran's regional project and ambitions, while taking it a step away from US and Israel. Diplomatic achievement, which enhances China's standing as an indispensable interlocutor in Middle Eastern affairs, expanding its geopolitical clout through subtle meditation and strategic partnership rather than overt confrontation. But this kind of networks collapsed on the 13th of June. Israel demolished Iran's image as a reliable partner for China and disrupted years of meticulous Chinese planning in its quest to challenge the United States and its allies. More importantly, the operation thrust China's involvement into the spotlight, exposing it for all to see. Through Iran's acquisition of thousands of tons of ammonium perchlorate from a Chinese firm, enough to produce fuel for roughly 80 ballistic missiles, is already public knowledge, and U.S. intelligence has long known that Changkwon satellite technology, tied to the People's Liberation Army, supplied immediately to the Houthis. The operation has dramatically amplified global awareness of Beijing's direct role in sustaining Iranian terror. Well, so their connection was very close. China's opposition, an infringement upon Iran's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity, and opposes any escalation of tensions and expansion of conflict. The spokesperson for China's foreign ministry declared after the United States attack there. Each Israeli strike on Iranian infrastructure harms China's interest, jeopardizing its access to discounted oil, disrupting overland trade route tied to the Belt and Road Initiative, and exposing Beijing's complicity in enabling regional instability. The strikes done by the United States made it clear that the United States was not withdrawing, but reasserting itself, and doing so on terms Beijing had not anticipated, and it was wholly unprepared for. As the Islamic Republic collapses, so does China's position in the Middle East. The foundation of its global strategy is weakening, China's global strategy, along with its credibility as a leader of an alternative world order. How about the view from Moscow then? By the end of 2022, Tehran had supplied over 1,700 unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, to Russian forces, with perhaps as many as 3,000 by late 2023. These low-cost, GPS-guided Shahed-136 loitering munitions, colloquially known as kamikaze drones, have become a fundamental element of Russia's operational doctrine aimed at systemically degrading Ukrainian civilian infrastructure and the military asset. Iran's technical knowledge transfer has been vital in enabling Russian defense manufacturers to scale their indigenous drone production capabilities. So Iran's help was a prerequisite for Russia's military operations in the Ukraine war. This kind of operation really was such a successful one because the operation also eliminated Amir Ali Hazadeh, the commander of Iran's revolutionary Guard Corps aerospace force and the chief of architect of Iran's drone and missile programs. It succeeded to a large extent. Also, another pillar of Iran-Russia relationship was military cooperation in Syria, which for years served as the most tangible expression of their strategic alignment. But the collapse of the Assad regime in late 2024, following Israel's stunning destruction of Hezbollah, disrupted this arrangement, undermining one of the core foundations of their partnership. Without a stable Syrian theater, Russia's Middle East strategy is increasingly constrained. And the practical utility of its alliance with Iran is now in question, especially as the Islamic Republic struggles to defend itself and its proxies, such as Hezbollah, hesitate to join the fight. Finally, the ideological core of the Russia-Iran partnership as a civilizational counterweight to the West is showing signs of a collapse. The once resilient Russia-Iran axis risks becoming a hollow alliance propped up by rhetoric but disconnected from reality. The era of American hesitation had ended by backing Israel through direct military action. We have seen the amplified effect of Israel's campaign and reshaped the balance of power in the region. Donald Trump's engagement with the new Syrian leader, President Ahmed al-Shara, followed by the military intervention against Iran, stripped Iran of a critical operation depth and left Moscow with fewer options. Now that Syria is opening its skies to Israel warplanes and has a government that sees Tehran as its greatest enemy, it is fast becoming a strategic liability for the Kremlin, which now faces prospect that its military presence could be exposed to attacks, turning what was once a buffer zone into a strategic vulnerability. So this time, Israel's precision strikes on Iranian drone factories, weapons depot and command centers, combined with America's readiness to capitalize on the strategic openings they created, disrupted the momentum of the Iran-Russia axis and directly challenged the foundation of the anti-American bloc Khomeini and Putin had thought to build. How about the view from Washington? Israel's successes, followed by the America's brief but effective bombing raid, has shattered the anti-American coalition of Tehran, Moscow, and Beijing. Probably North Korea could be included here. By striking Iran's vital nuclear facilities, President Trump has seized this critical moment not only to support Israel, but also to reverse a decade of decline that began under the Obama administration. Last weekend, decisive strikes halt this trend, restoring American preeminence. First, this kind of partnerships with Israel, with Washington, are backed by unwavering force. Second, the strikes demolish the myth of the multipolar order promoted by China and Russia, a system presented as stable and respectful of sovereignty, but in effect reliant on fragile regimes like Iran's. Russia and China have long presented themselves to smaller nations as dependable alternatives to US power, offering partnerships free of pressure or entanglement. Yet, when the crisis arrived, they stood absent. Today, Khamenei faces an onslaught, and neither Moscow nor Beijing has rushed to his aid. Countries like Israel can count on America in moments of crisis, but Iran, like the Assad regime before it, Iran cannot count on Russia or China when the going gets tough. So, by supporting, leveraging, and ultimately joining in Israel's campaign, President Trump has reasserted U.S. leadership at a rare moment of strategic opportunity, re-establishing America's influence as the region's defining power. With Iran weakened, the U.S. has an opportunity to strengthen its alliances with the moderate Arab state while cementing Washington and Jerusalem as the architect of a revitalized regional balance. The United States and Israel have now replaced it with full-scale strategic encirclement. Trump's coordination with Israel, the collapse of Assad regime, and the pro-Western and even pro-Israeli inclinations of the Gulf state have trapped Iran and significantly weakened Russia and China's position in the region. This has not only denied the latter power's strategic depth, the ability to project power through proxies and buffer zones, but also triggered a wider strategic dislocation, a breakdown in their capacity to coordinate military, political, and ideological efforts across the Middle East. The axis they built around Tehran is now fragmented and on the defensive. So, in conclusion, the commentary conclude that Washington must now sustain this momentum. It should elevate Israel from a key regional ally to a central pillar of American power, not only in the Middle East, but also in the global arena of great power competition. This requires expanded joint military planning, deeper coordination in intelligence, defense, and a reinforced commitment to the credibility only the United States can deliver. This is how America reminded the world who stands firm when it matters and who does not. Well, the strike against Iran succeeded to a big extent. It has also implications for North Korea because, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea has exchanged a lot of intelligences, especially regarding nuclear development programs. The United States, big action against this kind of totalitarian, authoritarian regimes will have another implication for North Korea in the future. Of course, North Korea's nuclear question is different in that North Korea has already possessed more than 50 or 100 nuclear weapons. And North Korea is estimated to have, ICBMs to make a nuclear warhead fly to the territories of the United States. A little different implications. While Iran has not developed nuclear weapons, it was on the verge of having nuclear weapons. And the United States eliminated those materials for nuclear weapons. But North Korea already possesses dozens of nuclear weapons. But can North Korea use nuclear weapons against South Korea or United States or Japan or any countries that Russia and China regard as an enemies in the future? Almost impossible. Which means that United States can have any kind of actions against North Korea's nuclear weapons if United States judges that it is beneficial to the national interest of the United States, especially thinking of Indo-Pacific strategy, calculating that militarily, if destroying certain part of North Korean nuclear weapons, helps, stabilize the regional order in Northeast Asia, there are some possibilities of United States going similar actions like they did in Iran. Who knows? Who knows? Nobody knows. So North Korea could be, probably North Korea was surprised by a very brave, military strikes done by the United States this time. Of course, North Korea has advanced all the nuclear programs with ICBMs, a little different dimension, but the fact is that all the intelligences and all the state of the art, military weapons, fully, mobilized, they could constrain the use of North Korean ICBMs or military weapons in advance. I think we could do that, but with a lot of risks, probably. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, today I spoke in English, introducing Hudson Institute commentary regarding recent, U.S. strikes against Iran, especially on the nuclear facilities. International politics is changing every day. Those countries without power in the international arena cannot achieve their diplomatic goals. This is truth. Only those countries with power can achieve their goals, either by the name of diplomacy or by the name of military games. This is a fact in the world history. Thank you.